If you were to just look at this narration and you looked at it and you said, oh, Hisham bin Ahmad, there's a nobody. Hisham bin Ahmad is no one. Therefore, this narration is now weak. But Ayatollah Burujardi ends up saying, no, this is Hisham bin Ahmar. But then this slave looks around and he sees that all of the supporters and the elite members of this individuals, this master that he has, his elite friends, his khawas, his closest friends, who know everything about the master, they are not acting on this. Ayatollah Burujardi is saying that this mawla, this abd, this slave will not act on the report, even if he gets it from a trustworthy transmitter. But when he looks around and he says, hey, none of the special friends of my master are acting on this, so meaning clearly they must know something, that either this is weak and so on. That's the point. Look, he says the second science that you require in order to do ijtihad is ilm al-rijal. And this is how Sayyid Khoi brought in rijal back into the hawzat and revived it and so on, because aslan he believes that you must study this in a lot of depth and you must get to the bottom of it, because your ijtihad is dependent on it. And he starts to quote, I said, Sheikh, can you give me some nasiha, some advice, right? What should I do? And right here, as he is sitting, I took a picture. He said that my advice to you is to always do the dhikr of Subhanallahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. But the way he said it, he says in an authentic narration, and he starts quoting the chain of that narrator, of that hadith. Starts quoting it, and he says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that the best zikr someone can do is Subhanallahi walhamdulillahi, and he could not say wa la ilaha illallah. He kept crying and choking right in front of me. Okay, and I'm like, whoa, wow. This man cannot even say La ilaha illallah because of the khawf that he has and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has. What am I supposed to say after that? Right? What am I supposed to say after that? This is the level these guys are at. This is the spiritual level these ulama are at. Talking about the sanad only, just the sanad. He doesn't care about the content. Says the sanad is authentic. Okay, in chapter 16, he says there's no narration which is authentic and it has a positive connotation. So why would the Imam use the word Jahadat al-Hussein, that these guys did jihad against Imam Hussein? He says the right word to use is Harabat al-Hussein. They fought, they had a war with Imam Hussein. He's back into Arabia, and he's like, Hammam was literally created at a later time. There was no Hammam in the time of the Prophet. Hammam means a proper bathhouse. Okay, like I don't know, maybe you have seen pictures of it, or you may have visited a bathhouse in some of the countries. He says this type of a bathhouse, Hammam, never existed in the time of the Prophet. So what does he mean entering the bathhouse with a waistcloth? So he will say this narration is also not authentic. And then guys, he also has another principle by which he discredits many narrations. If in a narration the narrator is narrating something that has his benefit, whether his worldly material benefit or whether it has his own spiritual benefit, meaning he's being praised or he's being bigged up or something like that, or there's a material benefit, okay, there is some sort of a issue that he needs to be solved and this narration is solving that issue for him, Baqir Bahboudi says, I am not going to take this narration because this is a conflict of interest. Okay, this is how the mindset of these ulama is going to work. And the reason for, as I just mentioned, the reason why this paradigm shift happened is because of the questions of like the lived reality. So first I was like, how are they going to send me the books from Isfahan? Like, I didn't know how the postal service in Iran worked. So they said, hey, we have shipped you the books. They're like, give us your address and your phone number. So I gave them the address. They shipped the books, and in a few days, the whole box carton came up to my apartment where I used to live at that time. In this book, in Fiqh Istidlali. So what is this book about? He says the Istidlali fiqh on different topics that have ikhtilaf in our fiqh. At least he lives in Isfahan. Now, he has also very similar opinions and ideas. He doesn't accept speculative arguments, and he focuses a lot on the Quran and establishing Quranic precedents for things and Quranic principles, and then using those to kind of come back to the Ahadith and analyzing and investigating the narrations. And unfortunately, Iran, because of its political situation, it's a country that is sanctioned. Economic sanction is one thing. Economic sanctions, creates a lot of problems inside the country. It creates brain drain. It creates employment issues. But at the same time, there's also a sort of the impact of those sanctions are also in terms of its intellectual output. And the West is very well aware of this. Because here you have an intellectual civilization that has existed for thousands of years. All of a sudden, majority of the world has no clue what is being done inside of this country. Majority of the world is cut off from the access to the language. It's basically a cultural attack on their culture and the intellectual output and the knowledge that they produce. Hence why I'm so open about this, that hey, if we are able to present to the world what exists in this nation, it's for their own benefit as well, and it's also for our benefit. Okay, because why should we only hear about intellectual output of the West or Western countries, or even, let's say, non-Western, some of the other non-Western countries? Why don't we hear about the output of Iran, for example? This is, as I said, it is not just an economic sanction, but there's sanctions on these universities, sanctions on some of these professors, sanctions on some of these. You cannot access the universities, you cannot have open exchange, intellectual exchange with these scholars. Even though everybody knows Iran is the biggest producer of Shia scholarship. Most of the Shia world around the world has no clue what are they producing. Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Isa Qummi, or any of these Qummiyun, Ibn Babawayh, Sheikh Saduq, Ibn Walid. If you see these guys attacking scholars and companions and narrators who are from, let's say, some of these other camps, or like Hisham bin Hakam's camp, then how are you gonna look at that narration? You're gonna say, hey, these guys didn't get along with each other, so obviously Ibn Walid is not gonna like Falan narrator. Obviously the Qummis are gonna kick that person out of the city because they just don't get along. They have differences of opinions. The family of Zurara, the whole entire family, there's the whole brothers and the whole Khandan. What were their kalami ideas? What were their theological beliefs? So they will go to Ma'rifat Istirari dar Qarne Nukhustin Islami. They're doing an entire analysis, historical analysis on that. And they say, in the early Islamic centuries, this is a very important topic, Al-Amr Bain Al-Amrain. They do an entire analysis on this idea and what is the narration coming from and what does it mean even. And the tafsiri heritage of Muhammad bin Isa Yaqtini. Okay. The belief that the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt are created from Nur in earlier Imami history. Bada, okay, so Bada. I want to end off with this paragraph written by one of my favorite scholars, okay, Muqaddas Ardabili.